Okay. All right. So, hello and welcome back to At the Edge. We're on episode 2. And we are going to be discussing something real interesting today. I am your host, Valerie Beck, and I have with me here my co hosts, Kris and Daniel. And today we are diving into more personal growth, mindset, and overcoming obstacles. And today's obstacle that I want to discuss actually can be a little bit edgy. So, we are going to be talking about money and money mindset. Fun stuff.
On
All right.
stuff.
Yeah. And just disclaimer, this is something that we have both struggled with, and it's something that we continue to grow in as we go on our own personal journey. So, this is not a how-to podcast, or this is not a what to do to get money. This is more of how to think about money and what experiences we've had that have led us to change how we think about money. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. So to be very transparent, both of us have had experiences living at the poverty line or even below that. And it has shaped the way that I especially have um, approached my life and the way that I relate to other people. And so it has a really big impact on me, and I'm really glad to be discussing it today. Maybe the first thing that we can share is our personal experiences in a nutshell about living at or below the poverty line, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Okay.
Well, I was in poverty for a very long time. So
Yeah. I mean, I didn't grow up in poverty, so this is quite a different conversation, at least my experience. So I, after grad school, was really burnt out, and I decided to, on a whim, move to LA to pursue hip hop dance. So it's kind of like a Hollywood story, but not, because I wasn't really interested in getting famous or becoming a famous actor. I just wanted to explore my passion in dance and maybe get a job to support that. So at the time, I bought a one-way ticket and I landed in LA, and I was doing a dance program there, and I was living in the dance studio
in the
for quite
studio,
some time. What's up?
you were living in the studio.
I was living in the studio.
What
Yeah.
that's like?
Yeah. Right. I've heard your story about that too.
Yeah,
So,
it's like I already know how it is.
and I was looking for jobs to try to make it work because I was really not in a great place already emotionally. And I think I was just trying to live a life that didn't make me so miserable. And I was going to do that at any cost.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to just be in a 9 to 5 job, even though I was going through the motions of trying to get one. Ultimately, I didn't get one. I ended up teaching dance in the studio for like pennies because most of the fees would go to the studio. I was working like a part-time restaurant job, and then I started slowly getting a little bit more traction of like finding more performance gigs or teaching gigs and finding like little contract work with the other skills that I had. And for my entire dance career, I lived with bare minimum. And I was actually, I have to be truthful, there was a part of me that was really happy
Happy?
in that, like, not because of the financial struggles, because that definitely weighed down on
Yeah.
me. I was happy with the freedom.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
Um, but at the same time, like, I really had to depend on other people, and that really didn't feel good. Um, and it, not only just like my relatives and parents and whatnot, I had to rely on people sometimes to like just help me out with like food or something.
Hmm.
And I knew in the back of my mind I didn't want to live like that. right? Like, and for some reason in at that time, like I just didn't feel like there was another option.
Yeah, that's the thing
And yeah,
being in poverty is like it keeps you it's not just the fact that you're poor, it's the fact that you don't, learn things that would make you feel like you're confident enough to be somebody who's not poor. Like it makes you feel like trapped because you don't know how to even live a different life.
yeah. And I think that mindset still haunts me to this day. And we'll
Yeah.
go into that a little bit
Yeah.
after you can share, after you share your story.
Yeah, because I was like, for me, it was that was just how it was because I grew up in such a small town already that, people, their power going out or their water going out or something like that. That was just like a common occurrence. That was just things that happen. Sometimes you can't pay your bills. Sometimes you go without hot water. Sometimes you go without electricity, and then we just adapted. And my mom had food stamps and stuff whenever we were younger. But she my dad died when I was like 10 years old, and whenever he died, I think she was given something from the government that was like $300 a month to basically take care of me until I became an adult. And she spent that $300 very like oftentimes. I don't know if it's because it was cheaper or what it was, but she would, you know, basically have me stay at babysitters' houses and they would watch me for like $10 a day. And so obviously they would feed me and they would take me to school, or I would, she would come to get me in the morning or whatever. But like it's just looking back at it, that's the cheapest way she probably could have done things, because I don't know how she found people in this economy to watch me because I was bad. But for $10 a day, I mean that was like, that's 2 meals a day, and she makes sure I have a bath and she doesn't have to spend any of the bills at her house. I mean, it was just, I just now thought about it, but yeah, that's like financially, the best deal she could have possibly made. And, and even the people that I was staying with, it's not like they were like super rich or anything, but they definitely made sure that I was fed. Um, as for like getting new stuff, I was always behind. I didn't have game systems until like years and years and years after they came out. I wasn't home enough to be able to even play them. My shoes would have holes in them, my clothes would have holes in them. I was made fun of a lot for wearing the same thing 2 or 3 days in a row. And it was just bad. And like you were saying about that mindset is like, even when I continued up into adulthood, obviously that money stopped coming in. Um, I didn't even understand the value of like a job really. So when I had money and I was living with my mom, it's like there were things that I just accepted. Like there was holes in my floor. I could see the dirt, from like my kitchen. There was expired canned goods inside the house. She just never took care of anything. So very often we went without hot water, and the way like the house was built, like during the summer, you can't open the windows because they just painted them shut for some reason.
Mhm.
It was crazy. So and then like I finally got a job and I got money, and I thought that freedom was like just amazing. I didn't know what to do with money. I just got money and I realized my mom's paying all the bills. I don't have to pay bills. So I took all my money and tried to buy clothes, and tried to go places and do things. And I just felt like so free because I was just spending my money on stupid things that I didn't really need. But it's not because I was irresponsible, it's because I didn't understand like where that would put me. And then I had a girlfriend at the time, and I moved cities to be in the same place that she was in. And then the person that I stayed with was one of her friends. And I remember that during these time periods, what we would do is we would take water bottles and cut them in half, and then that's where we would put like ramen noodles and stuff in and cook them. And obviously you can only use them like twice before the bottle just melts. And that's like how we would use a milk jug or something, and then after it was done, we would cut it in half and use it as the bowl. like like these are like little things you had to find out. And then continuing on, I never still looked really like into money. Every time I needed something, my mom would hand me $20 here, or, maybe she'd buy me a pair of shoes or something. But I had money working, but I hated the idea of working so much because I was so used to, like you were saying, that freedom, of like I don't have to really be anywhere or do anything, and somebody else is taking care of me. So in a way, like we were mentioning before this, like how poor people and rich people, there's something that they have in common, and it's that like that just lack of willingness to settle. And it's weird being broke and having those like mindsets, but then living like that for so long, you depend on people, and then you start to get to a point where my mom eventually passed, and then I was living in places where people were not willing to take care of me. There was nobody willing to take care of me. I had to take care of myself. So when I was broke, I just had to suffer those consequences of being broke. And there was times whenever I couldn't eat. I couldn't
Mhm.
afford a candy bar, and I'm like wondering how I'm going to eat. I'm eating other people's food. I'm going places trying to like eat on other people's, dollar. Like, and then the reality starts to hit you that, oh shit, I need to get my life together. This is crazy. So I saved up that $300 and moved out to California, and I was just homeless.
Mhm.
And I like had holes in my clothes. I sold my food stamp card for money, and I lived in the gym that I was working at, and I got free haircuts from like little things I saw online. I had somebody else paying my phone bill. Yeah, it was just bad. And I think just hitting that bottom so hard when you're in a new city, yeah, well, across the country from where you used to be, you have no family, no real friends that can help you, and you're just stuck. It just sucks because you're racking your head, especially when you look at LA rent. I had never seen rent like that in my life. And I thought, I'm gonna be at this gym, I'm gonna get a job, and then I'm gonna move into a place, and then I'll be set. And then when I saw that there was no place, you couldn't even sleep in a closet for $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
It's all more than $1,000 a month. I was like losing it. I mean, I was like banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how the fuck can I get out of this situation? How are people doing this? There's 12 million people or so in this county alone,
Mhm.
and the majority of them are having a place to stay and doing something with their life. Like, what am I doing? And then that's whenever I started my own business and stuff. But it took a
Yeah.
lot to get over that fear.
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of the linking factor is that even though you didn't have much, your mother still provided for you
hmm
in the beginning.
As much as she possibly could, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there is kind of this comfort zone that we needed to be knocked out of in order
Mhm.
for us to really feel the consequences of not having that money.
Yeah, because she wasn't giving me money, but she was paying the bills for her house, and I
Yeah.
was able to live in that house.
Yeah.
So I technically was living mostly free.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that I've learned throughout the years too, because even whenever I was like living at that gym, it took that gym shutting down before I actually pulled the trigger on starting my own business. Like it took the choice. It was like you can face it now. Either you lose all these people that you were working with and go back to being homeless and having $0, or you just pull the trigger and start pulling in clients. That's
Yeah.
the only options you have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes a lot to get knocked out, but it's necessary.
I was living ultimately at the end of my first round of LA, I was living in a living room for like $450 an hour. Not an hour, $450.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That sounds accurate though. For LA prices,
$450 a month. Um,
150?
450.
450. I was like, where are
Yeah.
you staying for 150?
Yeah. But at the time, that was all I really needed was a living room.
hmm
And you start to think about like, well, what is it that I really need in this life? And I think at the time, I, s- even though I was happy with living in the living room and I was making things happen, like I had a dance career, I started to shrink down my life too. Because you can't do a lot when you are only making maybe like $1,500 a month.
Just start doing the bare minimum to shrink
Yeah.
with whatever income you have. Yeah.
And so you start to have this life where you're just paying the bills, doing your craft and eating and sleeping,
You get comfortable.
but you're not creating really. Like
Yeah.
it starts to be survival mode.
You're in a rut, yeah. It's
Yeah.
weird too because I remember like the person who owned the gym, he would always tell us like, you guys are getting comfortable because it would be like me because I moved in a couple of my friends to the gym too because I mean, but he was always saying like you guys are getting too comfortable, not in a mean way like you're gonna have to get the fuck out of here, but he was trying to be like a mentor to us, saying like you're allowing yourself to get comfortable, and I remember pushing back against him. I'm in my mid 20s at this point. I mean, it's grow up, you know what I mean? But it's like because I had lived poor for so long, I just wanted to enjoy my own freedom. I wanted to enjoy my own life, and I hated the idea of sacrificing that. And so I fought back against him and I said, dude, we're not comfortable. We're homeless. I was like, I'm not comfortable, you know? looking back, I was comfortable.
Hmm.
I was uncomfortable living, but I wasn't willing to be more uncomfortable in order to make the sacrifices necessary to grow out of that position. Because he obviously didn't want us living in the gym, you know? So he wanted us to get up and get out and go do our own thing, and then obviously still be employees, but not be living there. It's a liability. So the fact that we actually were comfortable, I mean, it's so bizarre to feel in that moment how uncomfortable I was. And I thought I was doing my best. I thought I'm trying to get out of here, but I'm just not. Like your mindset is so different whenever you're that low.
I mean, a lot of it starts to become you know, one of those things where it's the Ouroboros or whatever, the snake
Yeah.
eating its own tail, right?
Yeah.
Where you start to get tired because you're pushing really hard to do the bare minimum.
Mhm.
So you'll get by each month. You are able to eat, you have somewhere to sleep, but your all of your effort goes towards that and
Just
maybe a
putting
little
the
bit.
cycle on repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like that's like the worst because you're at the edge of being in the middle. Right?
Yeah.
You're at the edge of being in the middle where you start to get comfortable and so it's okay, but you're definitely not in a place where everything is all set for you.
Yeah. You're not
Yeah.
high enough to feel the reward of growing, but you're not low enough to feel the fire under you for being punished for growing. Like you're just kind of like hovering in this, you're floating on the water is all you're doing. You're not really up, but you're not really down. You're just kind of on the surface.
Yeah. So, with that being said, how would you say that your experience with poverty has impacted your views on financial stability and money?
I mean, I would say I'm not. So I'm more of a because I was homeless. I mean, obviously, like I said, it was for a long time, you know, and I was actually on the beach for a little bit when I was in LA, but then I was living at a gym for like a year. And I think being that low and surviving to the point where I was able to actually appreciate that freedom and understand what that freedom felt like, it made me not scared to fail. So now because I'm, you know, at a position where I'm sleeping in dirt and I'm still getting up every day and I'm working out and I'm having fun and I'm hanging out with my friends and whatever, and I may not have materialistic goods, I do think to myself, if everything fell apart and completely went downhill, I could just go back to this moment. I can just go right back to this beach, shower on the beach, and just hang out with my friends. And I can just start over from safety, you know? But that's only because LA is the way it is. Out here, no, it was like 7 degrees the other day. You're not,
Hmm.
yeah, out here, it's a little bit scarier to like to stay outside. But yeah, so my views on financial stability now is like I'm way more willing to take a risk because I don't care if it knocks me back to bottom because I've been at bottom for so long. I'm just comfortable with it.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you always have a net. There's always a safety net, you know, and it's not even, especially because when you think like, oh, my mom and dad will save me or my friends will save me or whatever, like, of course, in this situation I'm in now, my friend did save me, but I don't need anybody to save me. I have a safety net no matter what, you know, no matter
Yeah.
who's alive or who's around me or everybody could be against me and I will still always be okay.
Yeah. I think I'm still figuring out my relationship with financial stability. I think that it's a double-edged sword, and I realize that because you can have a lot of people supporting you financially and you will still feel you'll feel guilty about it, but you will still be comfortable.
Yeah.
And you don't have that fire to continue to drive you to, reaching the goals or reaching even like a place where you can support yourself. And I'm really fortunate to have people in my life that are willing to do that. But at the same time, I really believe that there is value in being rock bottom.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that, whenever I start to raise children, I don't want them to have the privilege of having everything handed over to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Uh,
need to learn how to work. It's so weird because it's like when you're younger, you just cannot for the life of you see these things. I think also that, you know, we expect certain people to be certain types of ways. Like you expect a parent to be like one of your best coaches, for example, but your parents are just people. They're just like us, just like me and you. Actually, probably a little bit less knowledgeable because they're not fighting these curses, these generational curses or whatever. Like they're just humans trying to get by, and they just happen to have a child with them. So I think it's like in one way, you can explain these things to these people, kids, not people, but when you're talking to your kids, you definitely have to explain it to them very, very in depth, because emotionally they just cannot grasp what you're saying, because they have not ever had to go through a situation like that. They have no reference frame. When you tell them, "Oh, if you keep doing this, you're going to go homeless," they don't know what that means. They might tell you like, "Oh, I'm not scared of being homeless. That's not a big deal." You've never you don't know what that's actually like. You know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
have no idea what that's like. So yeah, I just think if when you do have kids, you can break it down to them, but you have to teach them very, very in depth so they'll understand it.
Yeah. This brings me back to this quote I actually put up on Instagram. I was reading this book where they talk about a study that was done where they rated people's emotional baseline. And it was found that over 80% of the global population operates from a baseline of fear and anger for the majority of their lives, not just
That's
like in a,
crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Right. So
I
it's,
believe so.
I mean, it's the fear of loss and it's the fear of
Mhm.
discomfort, I think. And the anger anger comes a lot from feeling like you're entitled, I think, as well, or like it's
It's a compensation
injustice
for,
and yeah,
yeah, it's you're compensating for some weakness you have. You're defensive because you're defending something, and it's typically from like fragile egos or like sensitive emotions or whatever it is. But yeah, it's like compensating.
I think a lot of the time our parents are trying to protect us by providing us with as much as they can,
Mhm.
but that is because they fear not having enough. And they're also a lot of the time they're trying to compensate for what they didn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they also have to realize that they're not superheroes, and that they're not most of the time they're not multimillionaires. And
Yeah.
it's like you can't provide for your kids forever because you are aging. They're going to grow up and you're going to age, and eventually they're going to have to take care of you. So it's not what you give them, it's what you teach them.
Yeah.
Because my mom she tried to like buy my love sometimes, it felt like,
Hmm.
because even though she didn't have a lot of money, whenever she did get money, she would give me, an iPod or something, or like a computer. If I asked for it long enough in advance, she would try to find a way to wiggle her way around to give me something, but then she would just like drop it off and leave.
Yeah.
She didn't tell me how she got it. She didn't tell me, what it took to get this, or, she didn't tell me anything. I think actually on Christmas, she, finally saved up enough money because she knew I wanted a Mac, an Apple computer. And that was a foreign object to us in this little small town, and especially in our little poverty. And she just came to the door one day and just left it on the porch and said Merry Christmas and left. And I was like, well, yeah, you gave me things, but that didn't protect me from the world. It's like you didn't teach me how important it was for what you went through to get this. You didn't teach me how to save up to get this. We're in poverty and you have a computer. There's so much you could have taught me about money. Just that little instance. But yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's a reflection of the consumer culture
Hmm.
too, especially in America, but also all over the world now, where it's more about consuming as much as you can, consuming media, consuming items like tangible objects, consuming food, rather than a culture of creativity, how to do things and what experiences you can have with people. It's so there is a lot of that I think that we grew up with. It's like the value is in the stuff and but it's not really.
It's all knowledge. I mean, it all
Yeah.
comes down to it all comes down to your like ability to get it, your knowledge of how to get it, and your willingness to sacrifice to keep pushing in order to make sure that you get it. And that was just not something. The thing is, I learned how to be very emotionally tough. Like emotionally, I could go through whatever, but when
Mm.
it came to being financial, I mean, I remember the first time somebody gave me $1,000 and they just told me to, like, I was just depositing the money for them and leaving the car. I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world.
Mm.
I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this much money. Like this was like, I felt like, those people carrying a briefcase full of like $1 million. Like nobody can know that I have this money. Like I can't tell people I have this money because to me it was just so much, like I valued, money, but I was just scared of it. I didn't want to have that much almost.
For sure. This leads to the next question too. So in what ways have you noticed your sense of self-worth influencing your financial choices?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Um, I would say when I was like low and I didn't have the ability to pay for things, I compensated in different ways. But once I started to actually have money, I realized that the lower I felt, the more stupid shit I would buy.
Mm,
Because I would notice very often that when I was stressed out, like when I was living in LA, for example, I refused to do things like meal prep. I tried and it was just something about it that my life was already feeling so stressful because all I did mostly was just work and I didn't have friends and I just didn't have a good relationship with anybody really, just outside of just working. And I spent like over thousands of dollars on food every month because I
mm,
refused to eat at the house. I didn't want a meal prep because to me buying food was like a sign that I had money. It was saying that I'm somebody, whenever I bought a new pair of shoes, if I bought a new bag. There was actually a time period in my life actually where I when I had my own coaching business, but I didn't have a car and I was sharing a bedroom with one of my friends. And I was making around $3,000 a month. And the only bill I really had was just that $400 rent payment that I had to make, and maybe I think somebody else was paying for my phone, but my phone was like at most $60, and I was having like $3,000 a month. I mean, I had in comparison to like the way I was living, I had so much money I didn't know what to fucking do with it,
mm.
So I was just buying everything. I mean, because I felt so low that I was constantly paying for things because it made me feel good. And then, now that I'm finally like in a stable position, I understand how money can get me to go somewhere else. I can move
Yeah.
out of the situation I'm in. I'm very comfortable. I'm living in a place and I'm not really paying rent. And I meal prep and all this, and I'm saving money, but I don't feel low anymore because I'm here. I have decent friends, I have a good support system. And because of that, I save my money better. I have a better vision for the future. And even though I have about the same amount of money as I did in LA, I don't spend that much money on food. Now I'm thinking about how to get an item to like start a new business or run some ads or, whatever. And of course, I want to buy clothes and stuff like that, but it's not because I feel like I'm not good enough and I'm compensating.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to compensate. But yeah, the low self esteem when you have money, you're going to blow money trying to feel good.
Yeah, it's so true. Either you're going to blow money try to feel good, or you're going to refuse money because you don't feel like you're worth the money.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
that too. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That actually, it was so funny because that's the only reason I was making the amount of money I was making was because I was charging such a cheap amount, but I was charging a cheap amount to so many people that it was able to afford me a lot, like that $3,000 a month
Yeah.
basically. But I refused to charge more. Like I was like, I know what it's like to be poverty, and I'm so scared to charge people a lot because I was like, I don't know where you're at, and I don't know how you can afford to live here. So I just try to make sure, I can give you good value and then I can also get something.
Yeah. I think that's a trap that a lot of us who have been in poverty fall into, is that we assume that everyone else is struggling like
Yeah.
us and can't afford to pay.
And we
And
just can't see how.
yeah, because we can't see how anyone can afford it because we can't.
Yeah, because it's
And
not like we're different than other people. It's not like we're dumber or lazier or something. And it's like I'm looking at these people and I'm friends with these people, but they're not struggling and I am. And I don't know what the difference between us really is.
yeah, for such a long time, I was just working for minimum wage up until very recently. And even when I had my own business, I had so much trouble setting the prices to be sustainable for myself.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, I went under for that first iteration of my business because when I looked at my charts, I wasn't even breaking even some months.
Hmm.
And the reason was my prices were so low. It wasn't that I wasn't making impact on my clients. I was helping people get better. I was helping them with their lives. They were feeling happier. But I was running an office space. I was doing the laundry for the massage clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Did
doing
you ever
all
have
of the
people tell
jobs.
you that? Did you ever have people tell you that you should charge more, like even your own clients?
Yeah,
I've had my clients tell me they're like, "You're so cheap." So I was like, "You should be charging more. Like I would pay more." And I'm like, "God, it's such a weird thing to hear out of somebody's mouth." I'm like, "Why would you ask me to charge you more?"
because I think they know how much it takes. They know how much it takes for you to show up.
And people
You're
like us,
putting
they know how
energy.
hard we're working. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
work hard.
I mean, and at when I do charge cheaply, I do experience that I do attract people who tend not to appreciate my
Yes.
time.
Oh my God, yes, dude. I've had that's the reason I stopped doing free trials at first because I noticed that every time I would do a free trial, I would end up driving or at the time I didn't have a car, so I would end up taking, hours worth of public transportation to get somewhere, waiting on a bus, and then sometimes they wouldn't even show up.
Yeah.
Leave mid-session because they realize this isn't what they thought it was going to be, or just they don't want to try that hard, and it's just like they're trying it out, and I'm like, I understand that, but I'm doing this to try to give you something, and for you to just not even show up. And I now took an hour here, and now I have to wait on the bus another 30, 45 minutes and take an hour trip to go back home. You know how much time you've just wasted for me by not showing up? And I was willing to come here for just you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, so I had to stop doing that.
Yeah, and it really reflects on our own, again, that it reflects on our self-worth, right? I've had to learn the hard way, and I'm sure you've had too, that not everyone is going to value your time. And
Mhm.
at some point you have to start valuing it. Otherwise, no one else is going to do it for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doing things like when I finally did get a car, and I got married, and then I ended up having a place to live, that was expensive and it was mine. Um, when you have that type of overhead, honestly, that was the only reason I started charging more. And I was working this manual labor job, and they were paying me like $250 a day, basically, between 150 and $300, averaging around 250. And so that was kind of a lot. And I remember whenever I was talking to people, because I was making 250 a day, and I was still my bills are so high because I'm eating out all the time. But my bills are so high that I was still barely getting by, and so I would have people reach out to me and then ask me for some services or something, and I would just straight up tell them, well, if you're not paying me the equivalent of $250 for this day, then I can't replace my day with your day. I
Mhm.
have to work my day because my day is going to give me 250, your days isn't,
Yeah.
so. And even though that was a high amount, I realized how little that actually was compared to
Yeah.
my bills, and I was like, that's $250, but like, I mean, it's really not that much for
Yeah.
me. I'm not getting that much from that. So
Yeah.
yeah, once you have the overhead, it really changes your perspective on what you should be charging, because now you're like, I literally can't charge you any less. I have to charge you this much, or I can't afford to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it was such an eye-opening moment when I realized that I was shortchanging myself that much,
Hmm.
that I would even allow my own baby business to go under. So that brings me to the next question of this like whole time and money thing, right? So I want to discuss, how do you balance the value of your time with the need to earn money? Because there's time poverty and there's also money poverty.
What would you say is time poverty?
So if you don't have enough time
Mm.
to to work on what you want to work on, and I'm sure you know how this feels
Oh,
like. We've talked about this before, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that frustrates me to no end.
Yeah. So how do you balance that value of your time with your need to earn money?
So like, are you saying like for a day, for example, where I need my free time to either relax or rest or work on some side projects, but I also need to make money, so I probably should be going out to go to work, and like how I decide?
Well, because you have big visions, right? This is something we've talked about, is like we're not just here to work a 9 to 5 and make our money and that's the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to inspire, and we want to make an impact on the world. But sometimes that's like, especially on a day to day, that's not going to make sure that we get fed.
Yeah.
Not for a while anyway, right? So how how do you balance that need to work on that bigger goal and reach those goals, and the need to make that money each day?
I think I just try to make sure that my free time is spent doing the things that I need to do, because I will prioritize my money first, because it is going to be the thing that will give me my free time later. Like I know, for example, like right now I'm trying to work on an embroidery business, and I need a machine and I need threads and I need to learn to even do it. I don't even know how to do it. So it's like, because I need that money, I work like 6 days a week, and then on Sundays I meal prep. So it's basically I'm working again. So it's like I work 7 days a week. And but it's because I know that once I pay for this machine and I understand how to use this machine and it
Mhm.
starts to make me money, that eventually, let's say I make, $100 a day or something, like let's just say, um, if I make $100 in the embroidery business, let's say I sell a hoodie for $100 or whatever it is, just to make numbers easy, then I know I don't have to work that day at a regular job. And every time I sell something, it will pay off a day. Now, obviously, my bills are more expensive than that, but just for ease of sake of numbers, it's like every time I sell a certain amount, I can free up a whole day. And then eventually, let's say I'm able to hire an employee, my employee will make all the stuff for me. And then all my time is spent going towards my bigger projects.
Okay, so I guess that's what I was looking for is like, how do you make sure that you are putting your time and the money in the right place? And so what you're saying is that you make sure that you are focusing on gaining the resources that you need right now in order for you to invest in yourself. So your embroidery business is an investment in yourself because that is going to expand your revenue,
Yeah.
right?
And in the meantime, I don't like not do anything. I think I work 8 hours basically a day, 8 to 10 hours a day, and then whenever I get off, I have to eat. I have to go to the gym. I do active something outside of work every day of the week, Monday through Friday. So I make sure that I have time to eat. I have time to do that, and then when I get home, I have a certain amount of time before I have to go to bed, typically about 4 hours, and then I make sure that 2 to 4 hours is spent doing something I need to be working on. So this course, for example, is like, the course that I'm making is one of my bigger goals. The embroidery
Mhm.
business is just to make money. And so the course is the big goal. So I need to make sure that I make time for that. And so every night between, let's say 10 p.m. and midnight, or 2 in the morning, because that's typically when I go to bed, I will be working on that course. I'll play YouTube in the background or watch an anime in the background, and sometimes I'll space out and sit on my phone and whatever. I'll take my breaks that I need, but I will try to work on that course for as long as I can, just about every single day,
Yeah.
because and obviously I'll play games and stuff so I can wind down and go to bed, because I realize like when you work on something, that's the reason like a lot of people tell you to wake up and do stuff before work. I can't, because when I feel this time poverty thing, I get so attached to what I'm doing that I get extremely frustrated and it ruins my day. Like if I
Mm.
was to wake up at 8 in the morning knowing that I had to work at like 10, and I started trying to work on my course for an hour, and I got into a really good like groove, and I started labeling things, and and just things are just flowing, and then my alarm goes off and it's time for me to go to work, I get so furious because to
Yeah.
me this
Yeah.
is so important compared to this little 9 to 5, or food delivery or embroidery business or whatever I decide to do to be making money that day. It's like I just want to work on my thing. So I have to save that for way late at night, and then
Yeah.
I have to do something to numb my brain so I can go to sleep and stop thinking about it.
Okay. Okay.
How do you balance it?
Yeah. Let me see. So I've really shifted the way that I think about this time money thing because like I said, up until recently, I was working for very little
Hmm.
and I was making it because I know what to do with the very little money that I have. I know how to invest it, etc. I've been investing in myself for a long time.
Hmm.
And I, any extra money that I've ever gotten throughout the years has been to learn something new. So whether that be a trade or a skill or work on my physical body, but I was still like operating on that poverty mindset and scarcity mindset of like I only have so much and I'm not going to gain it back. That was the belief that was holding me back right here. And I just recently came to the realization that that is such a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like it's such a waste of time to not ask for what you need. It's such a waste of time to not stand in your value because There are people with far less education than me who are making 1,000 times more.
You ever seen those YouTube videos, those people going from like broke, like they're already rich, but then they do these like challenges where they go from like having $0 to having like a certain amount of money by the end of the month or whatever. And you can just tell just because they have the mindset. It
Yeah,
has nothing to do with the way they look or the way they act or the followers that it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that they think I have a challenge and I have to beat that challenge. They just do everything with confidence because
yeah,
they've already done it once, so they know it's possible. But it's like just knowing that it's possible is the hardest part.
yeah. And I think now it's like my time is so valuable. There is no job that is going to give me that value.
Mhm.
And I am just operating off of that now. So when I wake up till when I go to bed, I'm thinking about what is a waste of time, meaning what is going to distract me from my goal, and what is worthy of my time, what is going to get me towards that.
Mm.
And that is a new way of thinking for me, a new way of operating for me. And I'm still like literally maybe a couple of months into that.
Yeah, and it's very healthy to have. I think another thing that I've heard a lot of people say is especially now that like we're in our 30s,
Yeah.
it starts to like hit differently whenever you start to think about it. Because me personally, you start to become so aware of your own mortality. At some point, you have to start thinking, dude, I'm like, we're coming up on halfway there, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, it's just a scary thought to have when you really sit down and really reflect deeply on it. Like, not just thinking, like, of course, someday I'll die, whatever. But whenever you just start thinking genuinely, like, I have got to get my shit together, and you look back and you realize there's so much time I just threw to the wind for no reason that I will never get back. I couldn't imagine throwing another 5 years down the road. Could you imagine throwing away another 5 years, wasting it because you don't feel good enough?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like, it to me, it barrels through all obstacles in my way mentally that's when I think about that, I'm like, dude, fuck that. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't care that that this is hard. I don't care that this is going to take a long time. I will section failure into any journey that I do now. I'm like, I know that this business is going to take off, and I'm going to give myself a month to 2 months to just fucking suck at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to fail because I know it's the thing, and we're just going to do it and get it over with. And I don't even let it affect me on an emotional level. It's just, I get it, I do it, I fail, I keep going. Who cares? Blah, blah, blah. Just move forward. This is the only way through it.
Yeah.
Like, I've even stopped playing video games as often just because
Me too.
I can't I have two game systems sitting right there, and I used to play video games every single day, the same video games every day because they gave me that dopamine rush. But once I've been like sitting here and I've had time alone in my own room and I started working on my course and I started making progress with it and I saw all those notes start dwindling from like 250 notes to like 20, I'm like, dude, we're almost there. We're almost there. We just have to keep moving. And I think once you get a taste for I forgot who said it. I want to say it was Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure, but somebody said it. It was like the thing that we're looking for is to like have a purpose and get closer to the thing that we are doing. So if you have a goal and you can visibly see results of you getting from point A to point B, that feeling will overtake, your addictions. That feeling will overtake your, phone, your video games. It'll overtake everything because that's what we're built to be doing.
Yeah.
It's like when you feel that hit, that rush, that little dopamine trigger, it's so much stronger than your phone. Your phone, you start ignoring your phone.
Yeah.
You're like, I like this. I like being in my course because every time I delete a paragraph and summarize it and type it in a book format, I feel so good compared to like killing a guy on a game.
Yeah.
It just feels so much better. Yeah. So
Yeah, because you're the one doing it. Like I do understand that dopamine rush for video games because like some of these video games, like they make you feel like you're making a difference, even though you're just playing through a scenario.
I know, especially team-based games and stuff, and like you pull off something with your friends, and you just feel like, especially when you have your friends with you. Oh my God, it's so fun, it's so social, whatever. But it's just, and that's fine, that's great. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's it's definitely a good thing to do. I still do it. I actually will try to make time to do it sometimes because
Yeah.
it is a little bit social, but you just can't let it become something that gets in the way.
Yeah.
That's why I said I'll play a video game before bed because I know if I do, I'll stop thinking about this course, and
Mhm.
then it's easy because like I was saying, because that course gives me so much more of a better feeling. I can just turn the video game off mid-match. I don't care. I'm like, it's time to go to bed. I go to bed. Or if
Yeah,
I'm working on something, you cannot pry my cold dead hands from my computer.
for sure. I relate. And my yoga teacher once actually told me that I should play video games just
Yeah.
because like I tend to be so intense, but
Mhm.
I see the trap for sure.
Yeah, it numbs you down.
Okay, so I want to shift a little bit back to mindset because I think this is really key. What are some of the biggest mind shifts that you've had towards money that have helped you view it in a more positive way?
I want to say in that when I was dating the girl that I was married to, she was an immigrant, and it made me realize that, because she had a car, she had an apartment, she was still having fun with her friends, and she wasn't even from this country. And it was around that time period that I realized there's something I'm missing. There's no way that somebody who is at that much of a disadvantage has so much more than me. Because at the time I was living with a friend, wasn't even paying rent, I didn't have a car, I didn't think I could afford any of these things, and so once I was able to get money and do stuff with it and actually apply it to things, I was like, this it shifted my view because I realized, like, I actually can afford to invest in myself, and this money is paying itself off. Like, I paid for a truck, and that truck got me a job, and that job paid for that truck. And I was like, this little flow of money can really do something. And then once I started realizing, like, investing in things and growing a business and whatever, I started seeing the potential of money to grow. And I wasn't, and people would think that I was like addicted to money, but I was like, dude, I don't look at it like I'm not hustling grinding for money. I'm hustling grinding because I know that this is going to give me the free time to spend time with the people I care about in my life. And it's also going to give me the ability to build bigger things for the world. Like, of course, right now I'm working a fucking 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it, or an app job or something. But this money is going to grant me something. And I have never seen money be able to grant anybody anything. But now that I have money and I can give people stuff, I mean, it feels great. It's like, so now I look at money as like, I can invest it in my friends and help them out, and I can invest it in myself and grow myself. And the more I do that, it's a cycle. It's just an upward spiral. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep going, keep going, keep going, and then I'm looking at the human picture. I'm not even looking at the money picture anymore. So,
Yeah. I would say something very similar is that when I got out of my own way and stopped thinking that my dreams aren't worth it, then money becomes a resource. It becomes a vehicle to help me realize my visions.
mhm,
Because I do have visions of like creating beautiful spaces for people to come together and share food, or to like take people on these like really nice like travel experiences, and you know hold retreats or whatever where people are changing their lives. This all of these things require a lot of resources.
mhm,
And I watch shows where they talk about like these nice hotels and all this like beautiful gardens, all of that, and people designing them. Is like everyone needs to have resources to build something beautiful.
mhm,
It's usually a combination of things. It's a combination of time, people, and money, right? It's not just like you can't just do anything purely by will.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely a stepping stone because I think you have to look at money. And in 2017, I was like, I kind of leaned into capitalism quite a bit.
Mhm.
And the then when I leaned into stuff, I like started researching it and studying it, whatever. And like, when you really break it down on what capitalism is, so many people are anti-capitalistic because the mentality is that I would trade you as a person for a couple dollars,
Mhm.
or whatever. And it seems so dehumanizing, but at the end of the day, it's only trading value. That's it.
Mhm.
Jeff Bezos is only rich because the world thinks that the value he provides is worth spending the money on it. That's it. Regardless of who he is or how he treats his workers, or you can say he could be a terrible human being, but everybody in the world who has bought something from Amazon has agreed that what he is offering is good enough to overlook whatever negativity he's done. That value is worth it. And it sucks being people like that because then they get really rich and they don't do anything with it. But it's like if you do want to change the world, unfortunately, you have to be that person. And I think that this goes on like a almost like a spiritual tangent a little bit, but in the duality of things, there's like love and power, and so when people have um love, they think that that is the opposite of power. And it's kind of annoying because then it leaves all the people who are bad to be powerful, because
Hmm.
then the people who love think if I'm powerful, I'm not going to be a loving person. And it's like, dude, but you have to have power in order to give the people you love things. Power is not a negative thing. It's just a strength thing. It's just strength. That's all it is. And so if you want to change the world, you need power. If you want to control the world, you need power. Whether you're good or bad, you need power,
Yeah.
And so if you ever want to give something to people and set people free, if you want to build towns for little, villages in impoverished countries, you need money. People need their time, compensated for,
Yeah.
regardless. And so, yeah, money's just a compensation of value. It's just I give you a value and then you give me a value. That's all
Yeah.
it is.
And money, power, fame, these are all kind of taboo, but they are also just tools. Like you
Hmm.
can use them to be terrible people or you can use them to be amazing people,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's
because
your choice.
it's because a lot of bad people seek power without carrying love with them.
Hmm.
That's what it comes down to. I think I was talking to somebody else about this. This was like just an observation that I had, is I realized that cultures and countries are like this. There are countries, if you notice, that a lot of like impoverished countries, they're very like loving with each other. They're very community based. They have a lot of, like you can go to your neighbor for things. You can, help your community out with stuff, and people actually appreciate it. And it's like people are just nicer to each other. And it's almost like people do see it as a, it's one or the other, because you have places, in some countries that are very individualistic or very socialistic, and you can see the difference in the way they interact with each other. Like America, for example, we are not that community based. We don't
Hmm.
love each other. We don't love our neighbor. I would not want to knock on my neighbor's door for anything other than to tell him to like turn the music down or something. There's nothing that I'm kind of trying to borrow from somebody down the street. And because of, yeah, it's just weird. It's just a weird observation that it seems like in places you can do that, they don't focus on money, so they end up having an impoverished country, but a very cultural people. And then the other places we have the opposite. We've got this minimalist, terrible cookie cutter architecture, and we have no community, but we just have a ton of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like money's not good or bad. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. And we live in America, a society where the value is really put on what value you can create. And
hmm.
so we do we are a society that requires more money.
Yeah.
I've been to Malawi, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, and they live in huts and don't have electricity or running water a lot of the time. And they're not, they don't feel like they lack that much because they
Hmm.
already have the community that supports each other, right?
Yep.
They only start to see that they lack something when other people come
Yes.
into their country telling them that they lack something.
Yes, exactly.
That's yeah, that's a whole nother discussion.
You'll notice that in American neighborhoods too, especially like minority neighborhoods that feel
Hmm.
that they're in impoverished, situations, like ghettos or whatever. If you go there, I mean, you would say that there's like a lot of violence, but I've lived in these impoverished places. That's how I grew up, in impoverished places. And these people care a lot about things like respect and loyalty and, and community and things like that. And you would think because they're, you know, you would think that they're like super aggressive or something, but it's like they're just aggressive to fakeness. That's something
Hmm.
that I've realized. They do not like fake people. When you come in here and you look like you're waiting for a handout, or you look like you're trying to get something from somebody, or you're not really being a real friend, you're just trying to use somebody, or you're just putting on this customer service persona, annoying, because you feel like you're deceiving me and you're insulting my intelligence by coming here making me think that I believe you. I know you're after something. Just be honest,
Yeah.
like these cultures, they do care about realness and community. I mean, it's like that's where some of my best friends came from.
Hmm.
Moving to LA and dealing with like richer people, it's like you can't get them to connect with you for anything. If you're not offering them something, it's so hard to actually be their friend. All my friends were people who had $0 and were eating, just raw spaghettios from a can. Those
Yeah.
are where my best friends came from.
Yeah, I do understand this caveat too, because when I was living on a shoestring budget as a dancer, I didn't feel poor, even though I didn't have a lot of money in the bank, because I had a wealth of community. I
Hmm.
really did. Like, if something happened to me, or if I was feeling bad, there were so many people I could go to. And it's it's just a different way of operating too. Is like some people can get by life on just that, is that they
Hmm.
have a really strong community that's willing to reach out to them
Yeah,
whenever they need it.
that's that safety net.
Yeah.
As I said, in those neighborhoods that we talked about, those neighborhoods you can go to your neighbor. They do know each other by name. They'll have a barbecue, a cookout, or whatever, and people come over. People have fun. And yeah, I mean, it's just so much cool to think. It's so cool to think about that. But the issue comes whenever you see these people and then you realize, like, yeah, I used to get in arguments with people all the time because they spend all their money on fun. They
Mm,
spend all their money on these get-togethers and trying to buy cool stuff and things for their car or whatever. And then I've been in these situations where I've heard them complain about money, and then I'll tell them, well, you spend like $600 a month on just alcohol. Like, you're an alcoholic. That's the problem. And then they just get all up in arms. And I'm like,
mhm.
well, see, well, this is where that divide happens. This is where, you can have your sense of community, but you do need money too. Because if you don't empower yourself to have what you want, you're going to be stuck drinking away your problems and never actually making change in somebody's life. I've heard this too whenever people, say, this might be controversial actually. This
It's
is a
fine.
pretty controversial, it's a very controversial opinion of mine that I have, but I understand on one hand, just to preface what I'm about to say, is that I know that people care about their kids. I know they do. And I know that this poverty mindset is a mindset that you get stuck in. You genuinely don't know any better. And so a lot of times when people are trying to take care of their families, they're doing genuinely what they think is the best.
Mm,
But something that I don't like hearing is when someone says that they love somebody so much and they emphasize so much about how much they care about that person, but then they don't set them up to be any better than they were. Like we were saying about giving your kids stuff. You're
mhm.
just giving them things, or you work at a job where you're making $30,000 a year. And of course, you're giving your kid everything,
Yeah.
but you're not giving them anything really because you're just giving them stuff. You're keeping them fed. You're doing your job as a parent and you're being nice to this person.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're not solidifying their place. And I know, and a lot of people think that when, like what you said before, when you aim towards money and you become, somebody who wants success financially, you start to think, well, now I'm just a money hungry guy and I'm not thinking emotionally anymore. Like, giving your kid money is not, that's not love. Teaching your kid about money is love. Teaching your kid about money and finances and being the example for them. If you're poor when you had your kid, you should be rich by the time they're an adult so that they can see your growth progress and know that, no, we grew up. When I was a baby, we were in this type of house, and now I'm an adult and we're in this type of house. And I'm going to do the same thing my dad did. I'm going to do the same thing my mom did because I know it's possible to empower people.
No, I don't think that is very controversial. I think that we as a society, we do get caught up with being unhappy.
Hmm.
I do. It sometimes it's not about money, or it's a perception of lack, but it's also a perception of, it's called santosh in yoga, but it's like contentment, right? So there's a concept of being content at whatever stage you're at in life, and having that as a baseline so that whatever you create next is going to come from a place of fullness.
It's going to be an addition to what you had.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, I understand that.
Mhm. And so when people are giving their kids all this stuff because they love them so much, it's not usually from a place of contentment. They're trying to fill some kind of hole, I
Yeah,
think.
they're trying to compensate for some lack, like you
Mhm.
said. Like, I'm pretty sure my mom was buying me things that she couldn't afford just because she knew that she wasn't able to be there emotionally.
Mhm.
She knew that she was probably not setting her kid up for the best things in life because, I mean, she was an alcoholic, so that's where she was at.
Yeah.
She was always at the bar, so she probably bought me things to try to make up for time lost. And it doesn't work. It's like you gave me stuff, but at the end of the day, I would have been better off having less things and a more present parent.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to teach me things about life. I have somebody to copy, somebody better than me. Because of course you can learn from people on TV, and of course you can learn from people like your peers and your friends, and of course you can learn from other people's parents. That's what I had to do. and but it's like you always know that you're on the outside. You always know that this isn't my thing that I can claim. But whenever it's something like that's my dad, like that's my bloodline. If he did it, then I'm almost destined to do it because we're so the same. I'm part of this person. But when it hits home, and you see it every single day and you see the hard work put in all the time and the behind the scenes and all that stuff, it brings a reality to it. And I think that's super, super important. I think it's good that, if you are a dad or a mom or something trying to strive for something big, to do it in front of your kids as much as possible,
Mhm.
to like show them this is what it actually looks like. I failed 3,000 times and you saw me crying and throwing my stuff and being upset and feeling like a failure, and you saw me get back up every single time, and now you see it paying off.
Yeah. I think that people are ashamed with struggle.
Mm-hmm.
They want for other people to see that it looks easy for some reason.
I know. Yeah, it's because they
Yeah.
want to say that they did it without trying. It makes them feel better. It's like you did this and you struggled, but I just did this because that means somehow innately I'm a better person.
Mm.
But glorifying the realness, and that's goes back to what I was saying about people in impoverished communities, they prefer realness,
Yeah.
and it's like that's what I would rather see.
Mhm.
I just watched a video just now, like one of those $0 to being rich videos, and it's like seeing this person put money into something and it not work out, and throwing money away, and because they're only working on the money that they made through the challenge.
Yeah.
So they can't put any of their own money in. So whenever they go back down to like $50, they're like, like I put so much money into advertisements for this thing, and I thought this was going to help me, and I thought this was going to work, and that failed, and that failed, and now we're all the way back down to here. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to complete this challenge. Like, and just seeing that is way more important to me than seeing some guy just say it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, I made $60,000 in my first month. I don't care.
Yeah.
What does that do for me? That
Yeah.
doesn't do anything for me. I don't like you more because you made that. I want to know how to do it.
Exactly. I think we've touched on some really good points. So, in terms of the takeaway, what would you say to someone who is still struggling?
I think I would say I have two things I wanted to say. One is to be persistent. I mean, I know it's such fucking cliche ass advice. I mean, it really is. But the thing is that what I want to say about being persistent is if you try, you might get there. You may or may not get there, but if you don't try, you are guaranteed to never get there. That's just the only way there. If you're trying to climb the mountain, it might be hard. You might fall back down to nothing. You might hurt yourself. You may never make it up there. But if you ever want to make it up there, you have to start climbing. Because if you don't, you're guaranteed to never do it.
Mhm.
So if you ever want anything, you have to keep moving forward. There is no other option other than moving forward. And with that being said, the second thing I wanted to say is a lot of people get stuck in a cycle. If you are being persistent and it's not working, you have to try something else. You have to try something else. I mean, if you are doing something and you see a little bit of growth, always be looking back and seeing what could I do better? What made that grow? What made that not grow? How can I double down on the things that work and throw away the things that don't work? Constantly be going back and reevaluating what you're working on, especially if it's something you strongly believe in and you genuinely think it can work. Look for ways on why it can't work. Look for everything stopping you. Look for everything that is working. And if you have to, copy other people's methods, copy other people's templates until you can figure out something that works for you. But yeah, it's just not just keep moving, but also keep reevaluating yourself.
Awesome. So, I would tell people to embrace your value. In our previous podcast episode, we talked about how you have inherent value just because you are here on this earth as a piece of meat. you're
Yeah.
flesh and bone, and just having that and wanting to improve yourself makes you like a valuable human being. And this took me such a long time to get, and it has made all the difference. And you could see it in people who don't have that mindset. I was volunteering at election polls with some other people in the community, and there was this old lady, and she was like working all day and working really hard, doing all she could, and everyone else had taken a lunch break. We were like, yeah, we're gonna take our lunch break, we're hungry. She had to stop and ask someone, I know I don't ask for much in this world, but can I please have a break? I'm so hungry,
Yeah.
and it's just like, don't wait for, first off, don't wait to ask for permission to fulfill your own needs. That's the
Yeah.
first thing.
Yeah.
And then after, like, once you've gotten there, you don't need to ask permission for you to do anything that is going to nourish you.
Hmm.
So it's just like, yes,
Just always choose yourself.
choose yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for some people that maybe like sounds a little selfish, but it brings actually way more value to you and what you can offer the world than if you just played small.
Yeah, I mean it's the same philosophy as like, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have something if you want to give anybody anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
All right. Cool. So I hope you all enjoyed that episode. That was fun. And stay tuned for the next one. We'll have more pretty cool conversations coming up. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like this episode, send us a comment, and subscribe.